be on like this again.
Yeah.
It's paid the history of time. We know what it's gonna do. You know, you look at your photos from 1970, those are become but you know, it's from 1980s to 90s. Those still look pretty good.
What is it, because of the age?
Gotcha,
or-
yeah.
I don't know how much of it's the age or the better in the quality or what. But I don't know, the inkjet stuff and the dice up stuff, it's pretty good stuff.
In a rush to Christmas today, I
I sold my huge old one, that was probably the size of that.
oh my.
It's bigger, actually. Now it's down to essentially the size of your notebook.
Cause you put in a lot of money.
Joe.
It's good. It's getting better.
Mark is gone.
Now you gotta, so I'm assuming you have like money maneuvers about too, like for making calendars. You know,
I was thinking about it, we talked about this, but I haven't really looked at how long it is.
Crimpers and all that stuff.
I looked, luckily I had it on my calendar for that long, you know.
It's so cute. Computer. Yeah. What are you doing today?
Hello, Joe.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
Got a couple of A50s today,
Yes. Yes. You know, honestly,
I mean, you're sitting
I
next
have
to me.
3 kids.
just-
but-
you probably yes. Watch out. No. I
They,
never really
no,
had
it's
that.
going well for everybody.
Yeah, so like got lucky.
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah.
Like
No, it's been good. I just like Karen's kind of like flying by because I'm like so you know.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I think that you guys came and presented a few months ago. And I
Listen, I
was,
really
Well,
care
no, we had to.
Yeah.
We did, she was here.
It's too hard.
Started
I just stood
to-
up too fast. But I want to list.
Which is why she said, we're gonna do that.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay, yeah. Mine are gonna be like almost exactly the same part. So.
all right. Nostalgia's really good. The high school has a home game tonight. That's such a 6:30. I felt like there was probably a slim chance I'm there.
Well,
Dealing
yeah.
with these two won't.
I mean, negotiations
League's
are a
going
different
well, I
issue. It's all
Freaking high school is like.
You're not dealing with logical
Lost or
actors.
something. Pretty good.
But sometimes you are questions.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I just said.
Sexist, yeah.
You know,
This year's
Why the
Vikings,
why phase? Why for everything?
I'm
Why
optimistic.
this? Why that? Like,
Town trustee.
just because
Special perks. Can I check this out? Can I check it out? He's like, well, I just thought.
I don't want it.
yeah.
And at some point it just says, I don't want it.
Right.
Just don't want it.
Just making this statement. Yeah.
But I do still need a bunch to take control.
Oh yeah. Well, grandparents get to do
Oh,
like
I give
fun
them
stuff.
all.
You're all dressed up.
I know you look great.
No, you look great. You look great.
You're nailing it.
Yeah.
At least making me something.
Yeah. Making no effort.
I mean, I'm making me day.
Keep them going.
She's like, yeah, I'm not.
I love that.
But I never know. It's been 90s. It's a bit delayed. I do it.
Hey, Ann. And
And the bees actually started
I just
early.
don't
But the weather came in late. So it's kind of weird.
things like months, maybe you can just clarify what happens. Just so, and it might come up. It says,
That's kind of
42.5, is it?
the new in soccer coaching this week.
I can have a watch. Like 3 minutes, right? 2 minutes. 3 minutes.
Which is interesting.
So the half mile mark.
I started
is
to change
somewhere south of Mount.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. No, I don't think there's not.
No, it's okay.
Say something about stuff. I get smooth. I'm like, what did you? You should know stuff like that.
Okay. Let me now welcome you to the September 12th, 2024 meeting of the Town of Berkeley Planning Commission. I call this meeting to order at about 6:04 p.m. It's the tradition of the Planning Commission to start our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. So please stand. pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Ms. Rieger, at this time, will you please take the planning commission roll?
Chairperson Anderson.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Smith.
Here.
Secretary Semadalis.
Here.
Commissioner Donnelly.
Here.
Commissioner Hoffmans. Commissioner Pond.
Thank you. Okay. Are there people joining us on Zoom?
We do have a few people on Zoom.
We do have people on
Yeah.
Zoom? Okay, thank you. Okay. Well, good evening. I'm Karen Anderson, the current chair of the Planning Commission. I'd like to thank you for being with us tonight. Copies of tonight's agenda are on the table here on this little black table here in front of you. Please take one and if you'd like, and mute your phone. Okay, with regard to the minutes of our August 22nd meeting of the Planning Commission, are there any comments or changes, commissioners?
No.
All right, with that, I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I move to approve the August 22nd Planning Commission minutes.
I second.
We have a motion.
Excuse me, can you speak up? I can't hear a word.
Thank you. We will try to talk a bit louder for you. And if
Thank
it
you.
gets to the point where you still can't hear, you are welcome to come up a little bit closer if you'd like to sit closer.
Okay.
So with that, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, and we have a second by Commissioner Zemadalis. With that, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Donnelly.
Here.
Secretary Semadalis.
Here.
Vice Chair Smith.
Yes.
Chairperson Anderson.
Yes, thank you. All right. So I want to thank our commissioners for being here tonight. And we also do have some visitors with us who are members of our affordable housing task force, since we will begin our meeting with a presentation to our affordable housing task force. Let me have you introduce yourselves. We do have two of our board of trustees with us tonight. And I know
Mayor Pro Tem Sean Murphy. Trustee Hardy.
Tiffany Brody, I'm the Executive Director for Birth at Habitat for Humanity.
Good evening. I am not Jeff Finnice. I'm Eric Hull. I'm the Director of Real Estate Development for the Love One Housing Authority, sitting in for Jeff tonight.
thank you. Thank you for introducing yourself. Thank you for being with us.
Pleasure.
Being with us tonight. Okay. Prior to, again, as I said, prior to going back to our continued land use items, I wanted to let you know that I will, when we get to those, give you some procedural background. But first, we will go into a work session of this task force. And hear the presentation by Walt Eilish. He's Berthoud's Business Development Manager.
Yep, thank you, Chair Anderson and members of the Housing Study Steering Committee. You all that are here this evening are part of that special steering committee as we study housing in the town of Berthoud. And so tonight we have our esteemed Economic Development Manager, and Audrey Herbison from upstate Colorado is also here. That is Northern Colorado's Economic Development Liaison with interest. I'm going to let Audrey introduce herself, but a very wonderful organization that assists communities in Northern Colorado with economic development and forms a bridge between interested parties and opportunities to develop in our communities in Northern Colorado. So they're going to talk about economic development and housing and how they go together, but really what that engine is for economic development. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Walt.
You failed to introduce yourself. For those of you who don't know, the woman who was just speaking is Ann Johnson. She's the Director of Community Development in Berthoud. Sorry, Walt.
Well, that's fine. Thank you, Ann. Audrey, why don't you come up, introduce yourself. Audrey's, as Ann said, with Upstate Colorado. For those of you who may not know what Upstate or who they are and what they do, we interface with them a lot. They're the regional economic development entity for Northern Colorado. They're the ones primarily that generates additional leads. Businesses looking to expand or relocate into Northern Colorado usually comes through upstate Colorado. And so, Audrey?
Hi, everyone. Audrey Herpson, Upstate Colorado, as you've heard. We work with primary employers. The best way to define that is any company that adds value to a product and exports 50% or more of that outside of the region. The reason that we do that is because it brings wealth into the community and supports jobs. So we work with communities in Northern Colorado, and while primary employment is our key focus, if it's important to a community, it's important to us. So we support local offices along the way.
Thank you. And although this is a presentation, I'd like to make this a discussion. Feel free to ask questions at any point through this. There's not a lot of slides here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through it. The first couple slides are just maybe refresher of where we are in terms of economic development, the kind of things we focus on, as well as housing. So without further ado, some demographic highlights about Berthoud. We're about 13,500 people. You know, the growth, everyone's aware of the growth that's taken place in Berthoud over the last 10 years or so. Annual permits, you all are dealing with that every month with Ann and Ton. Median household income in Larimer County is about $111,000. The median home value in Larimer County is about $576,000. And the median sold price of a home in Larimer County is $660,000. This is Esri data. Esri is a very well-known and credible source, and we use Esri on our website as well. There's other sources for this kind of data, census and all that, but the numbers aren't going to change all that much. Also, the rental housing units we have in Berthoud is about 762. Owner-occupied units, about 4,400 units. Average wage in Berthoud is about $47,700. I just want to give you that context as we talk about affordable housing going forward. You all know this. These are residential developments throughout Berthoud. I think just to put this on a screen and see that there is residential activity taking place in Berthoud all over town. You're going to hear about some of that tonight. And tonight at our TRC meeting, Ann was entertaining 2 additional developments that will be coming before you, I'm assuming in the near future. Residential activity, we show these kinds of numbers to businesses that are looking to either expand in Berthoud or move into Berthoud. I'll often give this kind of data to Audrey when they're promoting maybe Berthoud for a particular business or Northern Colorado. But you should be familiar with all of this data. This you may not be. Largest employers. As you can see, you've got three large employers, but after those 3, it drops significantly into small, medium. All of these employers, according to federal government criteria, are considered small businesses. But for Berthoud, Ursa Major is significant. Thompson School District is significant. Northern Water, significant. The Living Center. But you can see the vast majority of our employers, between 25 and 50 people. Just to give you an idea, I don't know if you probably drive by this, but to see it on the screen. So the clubhouse at the TPC, the Northern Colorado expansion, Ursa Major Technologies, that's an older photo. They've expanded that building. There's 2 test sites in that building. There's 3 buildings on site. The largest building, the 50,000 square foot building, is now their corporate headquarters. And then there's a small engineering building behind this one. And Ann and her team and Ton are meeting with them about their expansion plans pretty frequently at this point. Significant employer for the town of Berthoud. And I'm really excited about the bottom right. Agile RF Systems. You're all familiar with them at all? Building's on First Street. It's a 10,000 square foot building. Yesterday, Stephanie and I went over there to see, they make satellites, antennas. Right now they test weather, or not test, they show the weather patterns that are taking place at low level, below 3,000 feet, which is of interest to a lot of airports and others, because most of the radar that all the radar they have shows the weather patterns above that. This shows the weather patterns in real time below 3,000 feet. DIA is interested in their equipment. Northern Colorado Regional Airport is interested in their equipment than other airports. What was significant yesterday, you had about 15 to 20 Air Force personnel on site checking out one of their antennas that they're considering they will purchase. But this is they started out in their home in Berthoud. They went from a home to a co-leasing space with OKC Products. From there, they built this 10,000 square foot building, and now they're making these products. It's really exciting company for the town of Berthoud. At least I'm excited about it. All right, First Street Innovation District, you all are very familiar with that. Thank you, Ann, for really spearheading this effort. What I want to show here is, which I'll, in the next few slides, along that First Street corridor, there's close to 100 acres of industrially zoned land that will be part of this innovation district going forward. That's significant when we talk about affordable housing as well. Some other development opportunities along Mountain Avenue. Let me go through this. This is 287, 56. A number of these projects are coming before you, so you're probably familiar with this. 4 sites that the town is looking at. The old town hall site that we're still working with the developer on. 3rd Street Innovation, we're looking at redeveloping 3rd Street. There's plans in the works for that. We're also in discussions with an entity about redeveloping the Sunoco building. And we have we engaged Asher Architects to come up with a couple of renderings for possibilities of how that site can be developed. We will be presenting those renderings to our Board of Trustees so that when we do put that on the street, there is an agreement as to what we want to see develop on that site. The point in showing you this is there's also development occurring in our downtown area that could potentially impact affordable housing and the cost of housing in Berthoud. And I'd like to show this because there's people in the audience. When you talk about this growth that's taken place in Berthoud, and it continues to take place, there are some who may think, well, we can't handle that kind of stuff. Berthoud's a small community. We don't have things. We can. We've updated all these plans. Ken Matthews is updating and working on the expansion, once again, of our wastewater plant, water plant. We're looking at all the infrastructure, water and sewer infrastructure. So we have the plans in place, and we're improving and enhancing our infrastructure to accommodate all of this additional development that's taken place and will take place in the future. So, any questions about that? Is that any of that new for you all? Or, I mean, are you aware of this kind of development? I went through that quickly, and I don't want to dwell on that because that's not why we're here tonight. But there's a lot of nice, exciting developments taking place throughout Berthoud. And we didn't touch on I-25. That's more of long term. But the whole interchange on 25 is in Berthoud. And eventually that'll all begin to develop as well. So the reason why we're here, affordable housing. What is affordable housing? Well, it's quite simply the family's income relative to the housing cost. How much can a person, a family, afford for a home? According to the FHA housing HUD, and you've probably seen this, typically, ideally, no more than 30% of a family's income should be spent on housing costs, leaving the remaining 70% to go do whatever else you want to do. Hopefully you come into Berthoud, go downtown Berthoud, and you shop at our stores, and you go to our restaurants, and whatever else you have going on. But really, that 30%, 70% rule is pretty standard in the industry. It is standard in the industry. But affordability simply means that after paying for all the housing-related expenses, a person or a family has enough money to pay for everything else. It's easier said than done on the Front Range of Colorado. So the issue on the Front Range of Colorado is the increasing cost of housing is outpacing the median rise in incomes. I'm assuming we're all aware of that. It's not a secret, but what that impacts are working families. Seniors who want to move out of their two-story home or larger home and want to try to downsize. Well, think about that. It's pretty difficult to do that on the Front Range. I mean, it can be done, but it's difficult to find value in that smaller home that may even cost more than the home that you're in. So that's difficult. And then for college grads coming out, and I don't mean, oh, this could mean, 1 or 2 years college. There was students coming out, getting a job right out of college. Yeah, typically, they may not be able to afford a home or a condo at that point. But the Denver's, I was going to bring it and I didn't. I just got the issue of the most recent Denver Business Journal. And one of the articles in there is they focus on college students and the universities in the Denver area and as well, Denver metro area. And how much students are paying to go to the schools, and then 10 years later, what they're making. And they track that with all the educational institutions in the metro area. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. The point there is, if they're living alone, they're going to have a tough time affording any kind of owner-occupied unit at mostly the average wage that they're making coming out of those schools. So I want to read this to you too. For an example, a family of four earning the average birth and household income of $110,000, according to the 30% rule, could afford a home of about $367,000. We heard this morning that a developer is looking to construct affordable housing in Berthoud. Development looks nice, and Tom will be bringing that to you later on. But we asked him the question, what is affordable? $400,000 to $500,000, because they can't build anything less expensive than that. Now, I didn't comment, but you think about that. That's affordable for Northern Colorado. We're no different. Berthoud is not unique among the communities from probably Colorado Springs maybe, or Castle Rock to Fort Collins along the I-25 corridor. I want to read this to you. One sentence, real quick. This just came out. Economic indicators that are put out by the Metro Denver Chamber of Commerce. It comes out monthly. They track everything. But I just pulled out housing. I'm just going to read one sentence. This is hot off the press. Families making the area median income in the Denver MSA, which includes us, would have to spend 44% of their pre-tax income on mortgage payments on a medium-priced existing single-family home. So it's gone from 30% to 44%. I even heard 50%. So that 30% rule for Metro Denver is difficult. And that's going to lead to, and any questions about that? I don't think this would be much of a surprise, especially those of us who might have some kids that are looking to purchase a home or whatever. You're living it every day. But why is this important? Should we even care? Does it matter? People are finding homes. They might be working 2, 3, 4, 5 jobs to live in a house, but so why should we care about it or be interested? Really, from an economic development point of view, I'm not talking about I'm not focusing on the social aspect of this. There's people here organizations that will do that. But from an economic development perspective, stable and affordable housing is critical for our communities and the overall economy. Lack of affordable housing directly impacts our local jobs and employers' ability to find and retain people. Because if a person is employed by a company and they have to drive 25 miles to get to work because that's where they can afford to live, their time with the company or their willingness to move from business to business to business to find something or maybe a job that's closer to where they live, a little more money, they're gonna do it. So it's making it difficult for employers to retain and somewhat attract people to their place of business. Also, people with just more of a disposable income, we're actively engaged with our downtown businesses in a number of different ways. But the more disposable income you have, that's not devoted strictly to your mortgage payment and housing, that's more money you have to come downtown. I'm being selfish. Coming downtown Berthoud, eating at our restaurants, going to our coffee shops, going to Wishful Living or wherever you want to spend some money to keep them in business. So the indirect impact of having more of your disposable income to generate additional revenues to Berthoud businesses or other businesses is part of this whole housing, affordable housing issue. For those of you who have aging parents, it also allows people to age in place. And that might be, for those of you who have aging parents, that might be the most significant thing for you. When you're trying to find them, they're downsizing. They need it. They want to stay in the community if they can, stay close to their kids. Finding that affordable house or condo or townhome, whatever it is difficult. Is difficult for them. Then people who live in affordable housing tend to be more stable, long-term employees because they don't need to move often. Reduces employee turnover related to cost of training employees. Reduces problems associated with dependability as whether employees show up to work or not. And that's becoming an issue for all of us, for all employers now. And there's many reasons for that. It's not just the housing, but housing does play into that. Any thoughts about that? Why we think from an economic development perspective, and Audrey deals with this even more so than I do, because upstate Colorado is the entry point, for she mentioned, for primary employers looking to expand or locate into northern Colorado. And one of the questions that come up eventually is employee, the workforce. Where is it going to come from? Are they in close proximity to the site or whatever that I'm looking at? One of the things that if your employer looking at Colorado, not from California, probably not from DC or the East Coast, if you're looking at Colorado, at least the front range of Colorado, not all, the front range, and you're from the Midwest, you may be even from Arizona, and you begin to look at our cost of living, primarily housing cost, it's beginning to deter those businesses from selecting the Denver metro area as a place to relocate to or expand to, because once they're employees, and once they may share with their employees that they're looking to do this, or their employees know, and then they start pulling out the cost of living in our area as it primarily relates to housing cost. I know, and Audrey knows this better than I, they go, well, wait a minute, can't select Denver or that metro area because our employees can't afford to live there. Just can't afford to live there. Some demographic trends in northern Colorado. Northern Colorado is the growth area in Colorado. Well, Larimer County is where people are moving to. And according to the state demographer, it's slowing down a bit, but it's not going to stop. This is data from the state demographer. By 2040, they're projecting the population in northern Colorado of about 969,000 people. That's about 300,000 more than we are now. They're going to have to live someplace. They're going to want to live someplace. The median home value in Larimer County is higher than the state of Colorado, and almost 1/3 of the owners and renters are paying more than 30% of their income on housing, showing that housing costs are a burden in this area. a need to accommodate and consider, I mentioned this, Laramie County's aging population. It's projected to be a 31% growth in the next 5 years, and the fastest growing population over the next 25 years. And that's coming from the State Demographer's Office. Once again, should we care about that? I mean, should we as a community, should we as a region care about that? I mean, that's a decision I think each one of our communities are facing. How much should we focus, how much of our efforts should we focus on trying to be more attractive to the average employee, where they can buy a home or condo or whatever, owner-occupied unit in our communities? More and more of us, I say us, Northern Colorado communities, are looking at that. One of the reasons for that is because of all the discussion that took place this last legislative session in Denver. These 3 bills were passed. It's a priority for our governor because he's seeing what's happening around the state, but primarily the Front Range of Colorado. In fact, Ann, are you, this housing study that we're doing, is that part of SB 174?
We did receive a grant from DOLA for the work. I don't know which bill
Okay.
it came from.
Yep. There's BizWest is hosting a Northern Colorado Affordable Housing Summit on October 3rd. But ultimately, I think the Board of Trustees, Planning Commission, it'll be a decision that will come before you whether you think this should be a priority for our community's growth going forward. And if it is, if you decide, yeah, our average price of a home is $660,000, that's not too affordable for the average person. There's things that we can do to try to bring down that cost, but that's a decision that I think you all as a planning commission and the board of trustees, if you want to pursue that, would be something we'd tackle in much more detail going forward. So from an economic development perspective, employment perspective, it's an important issue going forward. And what's interesting also, it's not just Colorado. You can Google affordable housing and you'll pull up the state of Virginia, state of West Virginia, of course, California, the DC area, Michigan. A lot of states in the United States are beginning to raise this issue of how they can begin to look at generating housing that's much more affordable for the average employee throughout the country and in any of our communities. So I'd like to open for a discussion, really, because I didn't mean for this to be a presentation. Audrey's here to give you some interesting perspectives from an employer. Berthoud, if you look at an Ursa Major, they may not have too much of an issue because of the kind of company that is. They test rocket engines and they're bringing in engineers from all over. People want to work there because if you're in the aerospace industry and you know of Ursa Major, it's one of those companies that you want to work at. But saying that, very few of their employees are living in Berthoud. They're coming in from Denver, Firestone, Frederick, maybe Fort Collins. We're so fortunate that their CEO does live in Berthoud, and a few others do live in Berthoud. But for the most part, they're employees coming in from all over the region. Now, if we had more affordable housing, could we attract employees like who are employed at Ursa Major? I'd like to think we could. And with their disposable income, it just generates positive indirect benefits for all of our businesses, probably along our Mountain Avenue corridor. So it is an economic development issue. I think going forward, it's something, if Berthoud wants to be an employer of choice, that could distinguish us from other communities on the Front Range. Go ahead. there's other things that we would have to work on too, but in terms of being a destination, a location where their employees can live and work next to their place of employment would be an advantage for us that at this point, not a lot of the communities on the Front Range are in that position. Questions, comments?
Task force members, do you have questions of Mr. Relish?
Or Audrey?
Yeah, I can respond
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
Any questions of?
Well, I was just gonna ask, so speaking of other communities, and you said that this is, you know, kind of a broad issue, but
Yes.
is there anywhere in northern Colorado where you feel like they're really doing things right and could serve as a good example for steps we could take?
I think it's early in this whole process.
I see.
Fort Collins is looking at it.
Okay.
Yep, Greeley is too. Denver, yeah, I mean, the mayor of Denver, Mayor Johnson, that's part of his, he's presenting his budget today, I think, or something, but it was in the Denver Post, that's a priority for him and the city of Denver. But for us out in the region, I think many of our communities are just beginning to get into this. And it's this affordable housing summit that BizWest is doing. They're focusing on bringing in all these communities in Northern Colorado to have this discussion.
They're also, from what I've seen, they take different approaches, right? Every community has its own philosophy, right? Do you subsidize housing? Do you bring in affordable housing, attainable housing? But I think that for the most part, everyone is looking at how do we increase supply, right? Because having more product is the best way to really tackle prices. So I think they're all taking different approaches, and as this continues to shake out, we'll see what's been successful and what's maybe less successful.
I think I'd like to comment just from a community perspective, because I totally appreciate the economic development standpoint, but from a realistic perspective, from living in a community in Colorado, and then the problem of affordable housing is nationwide, right? But when you talk about the examples of that discretionary income that is not spent on housing, so, I mean, we're talking about medical bills, school activity fees. We're talking about inflation and how it affects going to the fuel, station and the grocery store. All of those factors impact and cut into that. It really doesn't define discretionary at that point, right?
No,
so I
you're
think it's just
absolutely right.
such a big issue, and there are so many statistics, and I'm sure you could speak to that as well. We could be here literally all night and talk about those facts and how individuals each and every day, no matter what the income level, are impacted. So it's a huge issue. So I appreciate what you've presented this evening.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, thank you for that.
Yes.
That bridge, because I did
Yes.
want to make a comment as well. Thank you for this information, Walt and Audrey. I won't call it a presentation because I know you want this to be interactive.
Yes, thank you.
And I don't know how much Jeff has shared with you all about the work that the Affordable Housing Task Force in Loveland has undertaken in the last three and a half years. But one of the many things we did was commission a regional housing study, which I'm happy to share with you all. It's a couple years old now. So a lot of the findings of that study have probably just been exacerbated by, the increase in housing prices that you well documented, Walt. But when we got this study, it's about this thick, one of the things that jumped out at us was the consultant found that 77% of Loveland's workforce commutes in from other communities, just underscoring your, you touched on that several times. We actually went back to the consultant because we thought that was an error. It was such a large number. I mean, almost 80% is just mind-boggling. But to your point, that's not a good statistic for your long-term employment stability. As soon as many of those workers find another job closer to where they live, obviously they're gone, and so long-term stability for employment suffers, along with all the other myriad of issues that the community grapples with when we have a shortage of affordable housing. So
Yeah, thank you.
there is a lot of data out there.
Upstate has, Audrey has the statistics on the commuting patterns, and it is,
Yeah, we see about 50-50 exchange, right, between Larimer and Will County, and we know people are going elsewhere as well, but I think you brought up a good point, right? We always talk about attraction, how do we bring in these new companies? But the reality is that we also have to retain the companies that are already here and keep them here as they grow. And how do we do that if they're having to draw further and further, increase their wages? How are they still able to stay here and grow here?
Can I ask one question too? So when I think about that list of employers that you had,
Yeah.
I would be really curious to know, and it might be worth collecting the data to figure out what percentage of those employees within each company actually reside in Berthoud. Just, and that could be part of our steering committee
Yeah,
data that
it's,
we're going to
I,
collect, but I think it'd be really
that is,
interesting.
that's a good question. Based on my experience of just meeting with all of them, I think the majority of their employees do live in Berthoud. Most of those companies have been here a long time. And one of the reasons they like being here, these smaller companies, is they live here as well. Their commute time is really short.
Right.
And so if they can, a lot of their employees are in this area as well, and they've been with them a long time. Northern Water, probably a different ballgame altogether.
Sure.
That data is very valuable. It's also very difficult to get. And so I think through a task force, it's a great way to do it because there are phone calls and companies do have to provide that data. And, but yeah, very valuable information.
And I didn't mean to be facetious earlier about the disposable income. And you're absolutely right. After they pay their mortgage, food is the next, or medical bills.
Right.
I mean, that could be all they have the money for is medical bills and food. My small town, my downtown and all these small town businesses are I'm thinking about them as well. But you're absolutely right. After you pay your mortgage, it's what do you have left over for a lot of us. And if it's not a medical bill, it's food, and then something of prime importance.
Oh, again, we could go into stats all day long, but a good portion of the population pays or severely cost burdened because of the cost of housing. So it's
And it's a scale, right? A younger professional will pay more of their income to housing than a more mature professional that is making more, right? Just based on the way that works. And so I think you will see that number shift. And when you see entry-level housing at $400,000 and the type of debt a college student is coming out of school with, and an entry-level position pays, $50,000 on a good day.
on a great day.
On a great day, that's difficult to swing that. So where do they live, right? Do they rent? Are they staying at home? How are they doing that? And how do we retain them we'd like to retain them in Berthoud first, right? As a worker, professional going forward. And if not, how we retain them in the region. And I think we think about these things because we do import a lot of talent here, but we want to make sure that we're growing and retaining our own as well. And the best way to do that is to make sure that they have somewhere to live that they can afford.
I would put up something for kind of thought. Just looking at the 30% figure, is that a realistic goal to even achieve around here? I mean, when we're batting much higher percentages, is this just like a pie in the sky number that we're aiming for? Or is it, something that we should, lower our expectations for and, incrementally kind of move that direction?
I think that would be a good discussion or a good topic because it's not realistic. It really isn't for anyone along the Front Range of Colorado. For the mortgage companies and the bankers who are financing, that'd be a discussion for them. And and is it just a numbers game for them? That'd be if they were part of working, it'd be good to bring them in. But because we just read it's 44% now in Metro Denver, and this is July 24 data.
I was wondering too, in that same line of thinking is, does that number change considering the age demographic of Berthoud? Maybe people on one end of the spectrum, maybe on fixed incomes. So how does that number adjust or change?
That's a good point, and I think I could do more research on that. I didn't really delve into this that far, but you're right. I mean, if you would look at different demographics, different age groups, whether it's, two-person income, two household income, three household income. Yeah, those numbers, and that's what the mortgage company and banker is looking at as you try to purchase a home or a owner-occupied unit. But yeah, it would fluctuate.
If I could comment once more,
Sure.
it's obviously
No,
a
please
passion
do.
of mine
Please do. No.
because of the organization that I work
Yes.
for, but to your point, Trustee Murphy, the reality is we can make a significant difference in the community, and we can, at Habitat, offer mortgages at 30% based on 0% interest over 30 years. So that is a real solution and opportunity for the community. What it takes is support and backing by way of talent, treasure, time to make it happen. So I think that that is hope for us and for those that could qualify for that opportunity.
And to the trustees' credit, I think you've already, I'm just thinking, the water policy for tiny homes, the water cost, you've decreased that for the tiny homes that have been built up at Prairie Star and other. So that's a good first step if you want to continue to go down that road. But that's the trustees, the town's attempt to try to reduce some of that cost by reducing that water cost.
I have a question.
Yeah.
As it relates to the Habitat homes, on average, how much does it cost to build a Habitat home? And what I mean by that is, you have land that's typically donated,
Right.
but if you just take the land out,
Right.
for
So
instance.
that's a great question. And currently, our budgets have been, prior to me coming in, and I've only been in my position for 15 months, we're building at between, I would say, 360 and 390, not including land costs.
And how large are the homes?
They are 1,600 square feet, about 825. So if you split, right, so it's a main level with a basement.
Okay.
Yes.
So you have, let's just round it up to $400,000,
Sure.
just for
And they're
conversation's
appraising, I
sake.
should add, at anywhere from 406 to 435,
Right.
depending on the size.
So how do you drive the cost down, right? When you don't control materials, you don't control the land price. What incentives are there, or what opportunities are out there that we can leverage to help an individual bring down the cost of a home or make it affordable?
Well, that's kind of the weird thing about that too, is like, what if we did bring the cost down? Market still drives the retail value.
Well, that's it.
So it just makes the profits bigger.
Right.
So really, it's really in the buyer's market.
Right.
You want to bring housing costs down, then the buyers just have to stop refusing to pay $600,000 for a house.
That's exactly it.
And that'll force the pricing down. We have another housing thing, and you'll see those $600,000 homes selling for $400,000 like we've
Right.
seen before.
There is some legislation for employers as well, that they can help with down payment programs for their employees as a benefit to their employees. I think that could be a component, looking at it holistically of how to assist folks that are first-time home buyers or newly looking to locate in the area for employment. Programs like that could be beneficial as well.
Are there things in place real estate-wise that, because I know, I hear this, I've got a few realtors in my circle. And I've heard conversations about how they really, when they get a good price on a house, it's like $399 or whatever. It's like the first thing that buys it up is someone that's not gonna actually be living in it. So can you restrict without deed restricting it? I mean, how do you control that? Because, there's so many other people with deep pockets out there that are just buying up real estate. And it makes the affordable housing go away because they buy up all the cheap stuff so easily.
I think that's a great point. You know, I think that you can look at restrictions, but I think, you know, in economic development, we definitely take a diversity approach, right? With diversity, right, all things are possible. And so it's not just about buying building entry-level houses, right? You also need to build the large house. So those that can afford it can upgrade and allow someone to go into that next home, right? Continue to upgrade and achieve, you know, the American dream.
Because I can't go in and buy a really expensive house because I don't make enough income. But it's like, oh, you make too much money to buy this cheap house. It's over your budget, so you can't buy it because you make too much.
Yeah.
It's kind of a catch-22. It's like they can go both directions on the scale, no
They
problem,
can.
but I can't go up. So
They can, it's hard, and I think part of that is gonna have to eventually be addressed through some sort of interest rate, you know, especially for.
become
folks
friends
that-
with venture capitalists that can buy my house.
Yeah, you know, we see that a lot, especially with new construction, right? And townhouses, investors are buying whole buildings of units. It's difficult.
There are definitely many layers of complexity, whether you're talking about the affordable or attainable housing sector versus the for sale market, right? And they're totally different. And the resources available, as you were mentioning, different programs and such.
And so there will be tools that we can control from a municipality standpoint. And there are things that are beyond our control. And as we continue to get more information and understand the external factors that are playing in Berthoud, like economic development, primary employers, and understand the importance of housing, and then you all will determine, is this important to Berthoud? Some of these things are going to kind of, you know, wiggle out, and there might be opportunities where we partner with Habitat for Humanity or Loveland Housing Authority on buying banks of water, buying banks of land, but all of these solutions are going to reveal themselves over the next few months, and we're just happy to have individuals come and talk about the different perspectives on housing so that it helps us understand how it impacts Berthoud, and then you all make the decision, is that important to the town of Berthoud as the Housing Steering Committee?
Thank you for providing that framework for
Yes,
us. It's
thank
helpful.
you, yeah.
I was just gonna ask one question, somewhat dovetailing on Commissioner Smith's comments earlier and in your comments as well. I know that there are programs and certain restrictions that have happened in some of the resort town areas where the employers have gotten involved in providing housing for people so that they don't have to commute as far in order to be able to work in those resort areas. So is there any one model that you know of there that is something we should be looking at? I know that Habitat in one of the resort areas has been very involved in helping to provide that type of housing for workers in the resort area. Is there any one model we should look at?
Well, I don't think so. I think the resort communities it's a different animal, a different ballgame, in that you know, the cost of living in those communities, whether it's Steamboat, Vail, Breckenridge, pick one, is so high that the average employee can't afford to live there. So something has to be done drastically. So the resorts themselves are building these homes and providing those. And I'm not sure what the structure is. I don't know what the structure is. Would that happen on the Front Range of Colorado? I think not in the near term. I don't think. So to say that could we bring something like that to the Front Range of Colorado? I don't. We're not there yet.
CML has some good presentations on that. Breckenridge building some housing neighborhoods. The school districts up in Vail and all that have also done that, where they took, the school had such large properties that they were able to take a section of the school property and build housing there for their teachers. So there's some interesting programs that I was going to bring up that I even saw something where I think it was a housing authority in a municipality in Georgia, where they built an entire neighborhood of affordable homes, but the community owned them and they were starter homes, so the people could then move into them. They buy them kind of like a Habitat home, and then their mortgage a portion of their mortgage payment went towards like an escrow account so that they can then take that money and then buy their upgraded home. Or another starter home someplace else. And then as soon as they moved out, then they would let someone else, another family come in and start off in a starter home. But it's almost kind of like in order to get a good affordable housing for that lower portion of the below average income is, I almost feel like communities or housing authorities have to come in and buy these homes and buy these properties and manage them. Because without having deed restrictions on properties, I don't know. But there's programs out there that are working, and CML had quite a few of them over the last 2 years that I thought were really interesting that they've been doing, like you said, up in the Breckenridge, Vale, Eagle area that are working well. And I think they could be down here and utilized down here without having to build a tough shed home like it's happening down Longmont for veterans. I think that's a little too small and affordable for most people, but I think there's a good compromise in there someplace.
I think to Ann's point, like Tim, there's probably a number of good ideas out there and projects that are being done in different parts of the country and in Colorado probably. It just takes a commitment from us or whomever to begin to look, say that's a priority for us, or that's something we want to look into more. And if you open up that, then these different ideas will begin to flow. I think that's a conversation for, I don't know, to put you all and then our board of trustees at some point to say, this is a priority, or it's something we want to get to, but maybe down the road we're not there yet. Whatever, however that discussion goes.
Yep. And our consultants, Ayers and Associates, I believe they do have representation on this evening. So they are hearing this conversation. They're just not here physically. So they're hearing what's being said and the conversation, and they can capture that to start understanding the direction that you all are interested in.
So in the framework you gave us a few minutes ago, you were saying we need to first decide, is this a problem that we want to tackle? So we're still kind of in that phase is what you're telling us.
Yep, and in the end of October, early November, Ayers will come and present to you all on the findings from the surveys, from the interviews that are coming up next week with primary employers, developers, builders, the downtown businesses. They'll have those interviews. They're going to do 2 community events, one on the 21st out at the rec center with all of the sports and the families that will be there, and then one on October 5th for Oktoberfest. And so they're going to gather all of this information and data and then come back and disseminate that along with the survey results and give you a picture of what does the entire community think about this issue, along with reviewing the findings that Jeff from Loveland Housing Authority has provided and other housing agencies that are in contact with House of Neighborly Service and other organizations as well to determine what they're seeing from a housing needs perspective. So they're going to come back and give you all of those findings. And then based on all of those findings, this steering committee here then will make recommendations on where you think this should go. And then with that, we would love to have Loveland Housing Authority and Habitat for Humanity on the 10th of October to this steering committee, if you all are available, and that is on a Thursday, to come and share what your organizations do, what your philosophies and focus are, and what you're getting from the marketplace on delivering solutions to needs. So if you're available, and I know you probably need to talk to Jeff, we won't hold you to that commitment right now.
I'll make sure he's here.
Okay, thank you.
Or I'll be here.
But and if this group is able to come and meet that evening, we don't have a land use hearing planned, but that is a regular planning commission night, so we could devote that to, learning about your organizations and hearing about the needs from your perspectives.
So, this questionnaire or survey, is there gonna be, I know we had this discussion about what's affordable, what's attainable, workforce, all that kind of stuff. Are we gonna put some guardrails there so people have an idea of what an affordable house is, what an attainable house is, or what, I mean, I think when people hear affordable housing, depending on what part of the nation you come from, can mean different things.
Yes,
Okay.
so Carlin
So-
from AIRS is going to give us that parameter. If you have two people in your household, this is where you are in all those different categories. So they're working on getting that spreadsheet to you all.
Okay, good.
Yep, because, and we also need to be using the same vocabulary.
Absolutely.
And, you know, what is affordable, what is attainable, what is workforce, and then what is then the individuals then that Loveland Housing Authority works with are not even at the affordable level, correct?
Yes, our wheelhouse has typically been the 30 to 60% area median income range. And so down at 30%, you've got a lot of folks that are living paycheck to paycheck and
Yeah.
literally one paycheck away from potentially being homeless. The 60%, obviously, higher income earners. But recently, I have a project under construction right now where we've pushed to 80% AMI because we have demand demonstrated at the 70 and 80% levels. And the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority is now allowing that. So I think, again, that just underscores the need and the shortage. And you have folks that are at higher income ranges, but still not able to afford, you know, a market rate home.
And when you say 70 to 80%, is that pre-tax earnings?
Gross, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And
that doesn't
Habitat serves
include
the 40
insurance,
to
healthcare,
80%.
Yeah, wow, it's interesting.
And we really have to watch when we're designating units at the 80% AMI level. I mean, you're starting to get pretty close to market rate rents there. And so we don't want to, you know, if there's no demand for those units, we don't want to build them or designate them as 80%. But this is the first project we're doing it. We're trusting our market study and we're trusting what we're hearing from the community. So.
As we said before, from what I know from Habitat, from being involved with that, is that these are people that are part of the fabric of our community. These are people who are a librarian, a teacher, a healthcare worker. So these are people who are people that you run into every day in our community who cannot afford a home otherwise.
Well, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Audrey and Walt, thank you so much for coming and sharing this information with us. And we really appreciate this time.
Thank you for the invite.
And we're happy to follow up with any information that you need.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, do you want to take maybe 10 minutes in between here and say thank you to our guests before we go into our land use issues? You're welcome to stay with us if you like, but
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
take 10 minutes. We'll be back at about 7:10.
This is new material. So this is different than
Since the last letter.
Yes, since the packet. Yes.
Chair Anderson.
So anything that will.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thanks.
I really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
no, I know. I got
Awesome
stacked
job.
by your emails, so this is
These
new.
guys are amazing. I listened to you.
Yep, there
Is
was
it
an
that
email.
second email?
Then
No,
I
just
like-
back at you.
This stuff, sure.
Really appreciate the work
Well,
you guys
thank
do.
you so much.
So this was
No,
received in
have a
the
good
last
evening.
Thank you.
Take care.
So I need to read this because it was interesting reading this.
I like to read these in chronological order.
Yep, it is. Yeah.
So my intent is summarize the text. Yeah, it's ready to roll.
Okay, thanks.
Is this the same?
Apparently this was received in the last night.
How
Different than.
It went in the other
Yeah, how are you?
package.
Yeah.
Very good.
I'm confused with just the chronology of this.
Yeah, this is a new one. All right. All right, so let's end our recess and bring us back to order here. All right. You know, as noted earlier, I want to provide a little background before we jump into the two related land use items for this evening. For our audience, note that the members of the Planning Commission are volunteers. We are citizens of Berthoud, just like many of you. Our duty is to review the application materials provided, hear public testimony, hear from the applicant, and then discuss matters before us as they comply with the land use code review procedures. In doing so, please note that the code and other regulatory prescriptions provide certain criteria for approval that we must consider. We have in attendance tonight from the Berthoud Community Development Department staff who are here to provide us with presentation of the agenda, the two land use agenda items, lay out the criteria and the parameters for approval, and will answer commissioners' questions. As you've already heard from the applicant during our August 8th meeting, and we did open the floor for public comment at that time, we won't hear from the applicant or have a public hearing unless the applicant has new information or if there's new information provided us and we decide to open the floor for public comment. We would, and if we did that, we would open the floor for public comment just on any of that new information. As stated tonight, we have two related items to be discussed. If the commission decides to recommend to the town board that they approve the proposed master plan, we will review the request to amend the zoning map to rezone the parcels involved in the Farmstead 3 filing. Okay, to begin this more substantive part of our agenda tonight, Ton Hildebrand, Senior Planner with the Berthoud Community Development Department, will present information about the application for approval of the proposed Farmstead 3 Neighborhood Master Plan and related zoning. Ms. Hildebrand.
All right, good evening, Madam Chair and Planning Commission. Ton Hildebrand, Senior Planner. So before I jump into tonight's agenda item, these next two slides are just intended for those members of the audience tonight that may be unfamiliar with the local land use process. So as the slide indicates, the land use process generally includes 4 steps or 4 phases. So this slide illustrates those standard phases. We are currently at the public hearing stage. So the order of business for a standard public hearing is outlined on this slide, and we'll walk through this together here just briefly. So the first step would be a staff presentation generally that typically occurs. Staff introduces details of the official request, the location, and how the project satisfies the development code and comprehensive plan. Following staff presentation, there's generally an applicant presentation, and the applicant presents the proposal and makes their case for approval. Following that, the chair opens the meeting up for a public hearing, and the public hearing is open for testimony, so that is when you would receive citizen participation. Following public hearing, the chair would then close public hearing and move into discussion and vote. And this, prior to the discussion, this is when the applicant also has the opportunity to address any public testimony. Part of the discussion or deliberation would be then the Planning Commission would make a motion made on the item and it would be then seconded and voted would be called, or votes would be called. So at the August 8th Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission closed public testimony and entered discussion. So we essentially went through step 1, step 2, and step 3. So public testimony was provided and closed. So the Planning Commission determined additional time was needed to address a condition of approval at the request of the applicant. Planning Commission continued then the August 8th hearing to tonight's hearing of September 12th. Planning Commission will start their hearing this evening with deliberation. So as you, Madam Chair, pointed this out. So no public testimony will be entertained other than opening testimony regarding questions on the materials presented since the August 8th, 2024 hearing. The applicant may be asked to discuss the items provided since the last meeting, and the applicant will be allowed to address any questions the public raises during the public testimony, should you open to public testimony. And then Planning Commission will then deliberate on all materials provided. So with that, we will move into the Farmstead third filing. So this is Farmstead third filing, Neighborhood Master Plan and Rezone. Staff first presented this project to you at the Planning Commission meeting on August 8th. At that meeting, the Planning Commission moved to continue, as I had previously stated, the meeting to today's date, September 12th. The currently undeveloped 124-acre property is located at the southeast corner of Mountain Avenue and Weld County Road 1, as seen highlighted in blue on the screen before you. The subject property is currently zoned PUD, Planned Unit Development, and is envisioned as suburban business, suburban residential, and urban residential on the future land use map contained in the comprehensive plan. The applicant is proposing 2 requests. So neighborhood master plan and rezone from PUD, Planned Unit Development, to suburban residential, suburban commercial, and urban residential. Staff provided a full presentation of the Farmstead third filing requests at the meeting on August 8th. In that presentation, staff presented their findings that the neighborhood master plan and rezone request meets the applicable review criteria with 3 conditions of approval. Condition number 3 relates to the proposed school site. This slide shows the location of that school site. Following Planning Commission deliberation, the Planning Commission moved to continue the Planning Commission meeting to today's date with the expectation that the applicant or developer and school district work through new information and work together to find a solution for the proposed school site. Since the meeting on August 8th, staff received a letter dated August 21st, 2024 from the applicant addressing the proposed school site. So that letter is contained in your packet. Staff also received a letter dated September 9th, 2024, and email correspondence from the school district. This information was provided to you in a separate email on Monday, September 9th. So since that time, staff received a second letter from the applicant dated September 11th, 2024, and a second letter from the school district also dated September 11th, 2024, which you received a copy of that at the beginning of this meeting just moments ago. And I will, at the end of my presentation, we can give pause so that you can have an opportunity to read and process those documents. The Planning Commission should assess and consider all of this information to determine if condition number 3 can be removed. That should be the focus of your deliberation this evening. Other than the documents you just mentioned, no additional information has been received regarding the Farmstead third filing neighborhood master plan and rezone. No changes have been made to the neighborhood master plan and rezone request since the Planning Commission meeting on August 8th. As a reminder, the town is not typically involved in school site selection. That is a matter between the applicant or property owner and the school district. Staff's role is to ensure that previous commitments approved by the town board as reflected, or are reflected rather, in future application submittals. So the proposed school site was originally reflected in the Farmstead second filing neighborhood master plan, which was approved in 2021. The 3 conditions of approval are presented on the screen before you. They are also contained in your packet. The 3rd condition was created by staff after receiving new information from the school district a day before the last Planning Commission meeting regarding the proposed school site reflected in the Farmstead third filing neighborhood master plan. During the meeting on August 8th, the applicant requested that the Planning Commission remove the third condition, which states, the applicant shall provide a letter from the Thompson School District confirming either the school district no longer desires a future school site in the Farmstead third filing, or the school district has agreed to an alternative school site within the Farmstead third filing. If an alternative school site is selected, that site shall be provided at the preliminary plat submittal. Depending on the relocation, a revised neighborhood master plan may be warranted, and we would figure that out at that time. So I have provided the following slide as a reminder. So Section 6 of the Town Development Code states that the town shall use the review criteria found in Section 30-6-106 as seen on the screen and in your packet, in addition to other applicable provisions of the code, to evaluate a neighborhood master plan application. Section 3 of the Development Code states that for the purposes of establishing and maintaining sound, stable, and desirable development within the town, the zoning map shall not be amended except when it addresses one or more of the criteria provided in your packet and on the screen. Staff finds that the criteria are met. Staff recommends Planning Commission make a motion to recommend approval of the Farmstead Third Filing Neighborhood Master Plan to the Town Board of Trustees with the 3 conditions provided in your packet and on the screen. Additionally, staff recommends Planning Commission make a motion to recommend approval to the Town Board of Trustees of the Farmstead Third Filing rezone request to rezone from PUD, Planned Unit Development, to SR Suburban Residential, SC Suburban Commercial, and UR Urban Residential, as noted in your packet and on the screen. And then one last reminder as I conclude, at the meeting on August 8th, Chairperson Anderson opened and closed public testimony and the commission moved into deliberation. Should you decide to reopen public testimony, the discussion should focus on the new information provided since that last meeting. So with that, I'm available for any questions. And again, if you have no questions, we can give you time to read those materials.
Questions of staff at this point, commissioners?
I do have one question. So, as it relates to the new school, how far is that from the existing well in the plan? Do we know what that is?
That would have to be confirmed by the applicant, and because I don't know the exact numbers.
Okay.
And I don't know if at hand, if any of these letters specifically state it.
I can do a quick measurement on the line.
So the applicant is saying 1,165 feet.
1,165, okay.
Okay. Any other questions of staff at this point?
And Madam Chair, if I may state that Town Attorney Erin Smith is joining us by Zoom if there are any questions for her this evening.
Thank you. Okay. And then,
I guess I do have one question. What part of the review criteria requires developers to, I'm not gonna say it right, but to consult with all of the districts required?
So there isn't a specific review criteria that indicates that they must consult with referral agencies, if that's what.
That's what I mean, consult
So,
with referral agencies. yes.
Referral agencies are part of the application review process on the town side. So and of course, with any application, that doesn't mean that we don't encourage the applicants to consult with agencies that are going to be impacted by their development. So that's everybody from, yes, the school district, the fire district, water and utility providers. So they are encouraged to always have those open communication. There isn't a specific set review criteria that, though, takes that into consideration. There is, though, a review criteria that is specific to meeting, and I could go back on this back here. So it's looking at the preliminary traffic, open space, park, utility, pedestrian design is adequate and functional given the existing plan capacity of each system. So that takes into consideration referral agency comments. Negative impacts on adjacent land uses have been identified and satisfactorily mitigated, I can't say that this evening, So again, that takes into consideration, when we look at that review criteria, we're considering all referral agency comments. And that's from that perspective of that how it meets or does not meet those two criteria. So negative impacts, we look at traffic impact studies to make sure that we understand what traffic components need to be included with the development. So whether that's signalization, a roundabout, XL and decel lanes, turn lanes. So those are the type of components that we're looking at when we say negative impacts. So there are provisions within our code that are specific to dedication. So dedication is for open space parks and schools. So those are specific sections within the code. That is why one of our referral agencies is the school district. And of course, it's very imperative to communicate with them through the process since residential increases those demands. So they are naturally a referral agency through this process.
And to confirm, they have been notified for every one of these meetings, right? The school district?
So for the public hearings?
Yes.
They are aware of the hearings, yes. And it
Okay,
is also,
they've had materials delivered to them or whatever for,
we don't send them the
Okay.
packets directly, as with anybody else, and including the applicants. We generally, with the applicants, we provide or direct them towards, they know where to find it on the
Okay.
planning department's website. But all packets are made available to the general public. And we do expect that some responsibility on our referral agencies, that if they are interested in how the project progresses, that they take it upon themselves to pay attention to public hearings and to participate in that manner.
okay, but to clarify, they have been put on notice. They may not have gotten a package, but they've been communicated for each one of the public hearings.
They are aware that this was in the review process and they received their referral agencies, and through that and communicating with them, like for instance, I was communicating with Ryan Baker, who's the planner for Thompson School District. So because that's how I became aware that there was an issue with the site through his additional comments. So he was aware that it was coming to public hearing through that conversation.
Okay.
And to follow that up, do we have anyone from the school district here tonight or on Zoom that we're aware of?
I don't believe we do.
Okay.
Is there any comment you can make on why the school site was included in the Farmstead 2 neighborhood master plan?
Unfortunately, we have not, Ann and I, in the research we've done of email communication and looking into the file, have not yet found anything that would give us any definitive as to if there was some special reason or it was just included, and it likely because it is a requirement of the code that it's either land dedication or it's cash in lieu of land dedication. So it just naturally probably came up in conversation, so that may not be why we found anything specific addressing it. And then again, because it was a matter between the landowner and the school district, that may too be why we're not seeing any documentation. It's just that it was agreed upon, and so it was shown and reflected in the neighborhood master plan.
Am I right in assuming then that when Farmstead 2 was presented for approval, that the idea there was, as opposed to requiring fees at that point, was that there would be this land dedicated in Farmstead 3. So that's why fees weren't paid at that point or weren't considered at that point.
Correct. So fees wouldn't have been considered at that point since they had agreed at that point to dedicate. But the fees would not technically, I believe, be collected until it's at the building phase.
That would be the fees for Farmstead 1, 2, and 3, I guess, right? It's all that same land dedication?
It was just Farmstead's second filing. So, and that's a good question that I don't know how this works. And I don't, so if this is showing up now, and this is essentially an amendment of the Farmstead second filing neighborhood master plan. I don't know if it doesn't show up in the third filing, what that then means for second filing.
That's what I was wondering, the same thing you were, Joe.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Any other questions of staff at this point?
Point
point of clarification. So when somebody wants to build a house, apartments, some of the fees that are assessed at that time include a school district impact fee. It will include, park dedication fees, other fees that the town collects. We actually have builders pay the school district directly and just give us a receipt indicating that that impact fee has been collected. And the school district establishes what that fee is, and they can amend the fees as they need to, and the town collects. And that's collected at the issuance of every building permit. And it's not just for a certain development, it's applied consistently throughout the town.
So what you're saying is that then as homes would be built in Farmstead too, which really hasn't happened yet, then that's, and permits are issued, that's when you collect the fee on Farmstead too. In this case, if the school were going to be built in Farmstead 3, you wouldn't be collecting that fee at the time of permit, correct?
We would have to look, but I'm pretty sure that's a great question. And if this site would go away, I don't know how it would impact 2 and how it would impact 3. So that's definitely something that's a wonderful question, and we just have to we'd have to take a look at it. It seems to be a logical assumption that would happen in all the remaining Farmstead, but we'd need to just clarify to make sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Should we take a minute to read?
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a minute to read what we were just presented with. And I have a question for all of us when we finish reading it. Staff, this is a matter of public record, what you just sent to us, correct?
Correct.
Are there any copies for the audience at this point?
No.
Okay. While you're still reading, let me ask the staff one question. And that's, do we know how long the facility has been in its current location, the, I think,
Oil.
it's an oil facility.
Oil facilities.
As far as we know, 2017, based upon the assessor data, Weld County assessor data.
And it's still
Active.
functionally in production.
Correct.
Just waiting for y'all to let me know you're ready.
I'm ready whenever you are.
I'm reading stuff. I don't want everyone else.
Okay, so we've had sufficient time to read. Let me ask you all a question. Do you believe that there's enough new information here that we need to reopen the public hearing? Or do you feel confident that this is information that we already knew from the previous information we received? The question is still the same as far as, does it meet the criteria? And if so, would we apply the 3 conditions that staff has suggested? So the question to me is still the same. Do you feel that there's new information here that would warrant some type of a public hearing at this point?
My first reaction is no, because the plan itself has not altered. And the information provided by the applicant and the school district does not seem to reach any sort of compromise. That would be new information to present to the
I
public.
agree.
Joe, you feel the same way?
Yes.
So we're just doing a little research here. So I won't bring this up yet. So I did a little research on this and I'm not sure if it applies or not, but HB 18-1352, oil and gas facilities, distance from school property. And in that bill that was passed in 2018, talks a little bit about the minimum distance. And what I read here is that the bill further.
Can I stop you for a
Yeah.
second? Sorry. Is Erin Smith on the call? Can we just get her okay that
Yeah.
this is all right to leverage this kind of information in this kind of
Well,
discussion?
yeah, that's such a great question. So new testimony is what that essentially constitutes. And at this point, it's not appropriate unless you're going to open up the hearing for new testimony.
Which we have the option to do.
Now, if you have a specific legal question related to the oil and gas issue, I think that was raised in the school district's letter, what pertains there is, I think, a misunderstanding by the school district of what the oil and gas regulations adopted by the town say. And so I would just tell you that as a matter of law, the town's oil and gas regulations do not apply in the way that the school district has suggested. The town's oil and gas regulations do not have a reverse setback, if you will, for schools. So that's a legal issue, and I think we can address that because it's been raised in the letters. But as far as other outside testimony, at this point, you need to again open up your hearing to take that.
Okay, so in other words, what you're saying to us so that our audience can hear, hopefully you all heard that, but I'm going to recap it just to make sure. So what you were saying is that the Berthoud's law doesn't have a reverse setback for an existing oil and gas facility, correct? That's your first point.
Yes,
Number
correct.
2, if we were to look at other information pertaining to this, we would have to open the public hearing. That's your second point.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so then that underlies my question. Do we want to open this for a public hearing.
And just for the record, could you, we have this information on hand, but could you please define the reverse setback in this context, just for the public? Since it's been
So
brought up.
a reverse setback would be a requirement and restriction on new schools that couldn't build any closer than a certain distance from wells have a requirement to be so far from existing schools, existing residences, and other uses that are listed in our oil and gas regulations.
Thank you, Erin. All right.
Thank you.
So any other questions of Erin before we?
So Aaron, would a state bill then kind of provide guidelines or
State statute?
state statute, yeah? Would that provide us guidelines?
Well, the criteria that you have to make your determinations on are in your code, and they're in the staff report.
Okay.
And we have them on our
So-
screen
So
too,
this
Erin.
is no.
Those are the required criteria that you have to use.
Let me give my opinion. I don't think we have any new,
Yeah.
broad enough new information here to open another public hearing. I think we've already pretty much heard some of these arguments before,
Mhm.
so that's why unless
Yeah,
Nick, you
no.
have another opinion, but,
No.
so I think we have a consensus not to do that.
Madam Chair, if I might be recognized to make a record on that.
We are not opening the public hearing at this point, so I apologize. We had that hearing back in August 8th. So.
I understand, and just to protect the record, my position is there is new evidence. You have asked questions about it. The applicant team would like the chance to respond to those. If the answer is no, I respect that, but I would like to make that record. My name is Claire Havelda. I'm with the Brownstein Hyatt Farber and Schreck Law Firm.
And we do
representing
have
that.
the letters that were issued by your law firm. So at this point, unless there's some other reason to open for public hearing, I don't think we're going to be doing that, but thank you.
Understood.
Okay, so we are back, and that brings us back to deliberations on this issue. What I would suggest that we do first, and I think this will be music to Aaron's ears, is that we go through the neighborhood master plan criteria one by one and discuss whether we think that this particular application meets those criteria. Okay, so let's go with the first one. For those of you in the audience, you can see what we're going through here on the screen. We're going to go through where it says neighborhood master plan. We're going to go through each criteria one by one. So in order for us to be able to evaluate this particular neighborhood master plan, we need to make sure that it meets all of 5 of these criteria. So let's start with number 1. The land use mix within the project conforms to Berthoud's zoning district map and comprehensive plan, preferred land use map, and furthers the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. Thoughts about that, commissioners?
I think yes.
All right, I believe yes.
I believe yes too.
Okay, so we have a consensus that we think that the applicant meets number 1 of the criteria. Okay, so let's go to the second one. The neighborhood master plan represents a functional system of land use and is consistent with the rationale and criteria set forth in this chapter, the town comprehensive plan, and the parks, open space, and recreation port plan as amended.
And this chapter means the development code.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yes.
I would agree too, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of anything in there that wouldn't.
No, I'm just.
And Thoughts about that, Joe?
I think it meets that criteria too.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a consensus of the commissioners present that this application meets number 2. Okay, so let's go with the third one. The preliminary traffic, open space, park utility, and pedestrian design is adequate and functional given the existing and planned capacities of each system and meets the standards found in this code. commissioners. We have staff who has told us that it does meet this criteria.
Yes.
Let's talk about we think it has adequate do we think it has adequate open space?
Yeah, I expressed some concern the first time about the balance between the open space between Farmstead 2 and Farmstead 3, but that has been accounted for.
Pedestrian design, we're satisfied with that.
Mhm.
The park utility, I think there's going to, and I read through my notes from August 8th, but I think there will be a town park there as well, right? There's land close to this area that will be a town park as well. Not
Yes, on the
Mhm.
north, just south of State Highway 56, and it's not necessarily a park. It's more of an open space area.
Okay. Okay, so do we feel that then the third criteria is met or not?
I think so.
Nick says yes. Abby's shaking her head yes.
I say
Joe?
yes too, yes.
Joe says yes, I say yes. So there's a consensus of the commissioners present that this application meets criteria number 3. Okay, number 4. Negative impacts on adjacent land uses have been identified and satisfactorily mitigated. Now, we did hear testimony on August 8th that there was some concern about impact to adjacent lands there. And I think, if I'm paraphrasing some of the concern, maybe it's too close. We have heard some concern about where the school is. How do we feel about number 4? We feel that these have been successfully mitigated at this juncture. As we know, there are 2 more phases to go here.
Yeah, I think that this is like a complex, probably the most complex point that we're going to address. And in part because a lot of the feedback that we got on adjacent land use impacts was related to whether there would be houses in the school location or a school in the school location, which is yet to be determined.
So what you're saying is it's some kind of contingent in a sense, but.
Right. So in that sense, I think perhaps it has not been satisfactorily mitigated because it hasn't even been resolved.
Other commissioners?
Yeah, I think we need a resolution to that. Would that property be zoned differently at that stage as well?
You mean if the school?
If the school was not there?
Steph, do you want to address that? What would happen?
They would not, the zone district that they're currently proposing would allow the school or it would allow additional residential. So as the plan is currently labeled, it would be either a future school site or additional residential consistent with Farmstead 3rd filing, which would then be a 5th filing.
Okay.
But it would not affect their request for the rezone.
It wouldn't be commercial either because it's not going to allow. Okay.
So with at this stage, and I know this is the conceptual stage, so it's a little fuzzy, but at this stage, is it staff's opinion then that this application meets the required setbacks under the land use code?
So we do not evaluate for land use regulations in this component where we did not assess the neighborhood master plan for setbacks from oil and gas. That is not one of the regulations because that would be the responsibility of the school district to determine if the site is appropriate for their specific or requested use.
What I'm asking, in addition to that, I'm also, and it's kind of a multi-layered question,
Right.
kind of a loaded question, I apologize, but would it, as it sits right now, if you had to apply the land use setbacks to the conceptual plan, I'm not talking about necessarily those that deal with oil and gas facilities. Does it meet all of the other types of setbacks that the land use code would impose?
So setbacks are generally assessed at let me start over.
I know it's kind of another stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
different.
So we do have landscape, so we have buffer requirements that are specific to zoning districts. So if you have a commercial use going in adjacent to a residential use, the commercial use would require additional buffers. You also have then building or structure setbacks requirements. You have like sensitive area setback requirements. So sensitive areas, we do evaluate as part of a neighborhood master plan process. They don't have any sensitive area. That would be like a floodplain or riparian zone. Building setbacks will be assessed at time as we move along further, but it is certainly something they consider in the process of developing their lot sizes, because of course you want to make sure that you have adequate space to develop current product type. So I'm sure they evaluated that, and we have minimum lot size standards, so that is assessed during the neighborhood master plan. Looking at their density, that all plays a role into that. So buffers, again, from their commercial areas will be taken into consideration when they come in for future, even preliminary plat potentially. If they do like building envelopes, we'll look at that, and we do consider it. But again, that's assessed and evaluated once we get more into the development stage.
Kind of more at the second phase and third phase here and later. Okay.
Yeah, so it's really dependent upon which setback is required within the code and when we look at it. So the bigger setbacks we generally look at a little bit sooner, with those then kind of going down further into the process, if that makes sense.
And I know one of the things that was a concern in some of the testimony we heard were buffer issues. Is that something that we would see more information about, like in the next phase, in the preliminary plat phase?
Potentially if there's a requirement for it, yes. But generally residential to residential zone districts, there is not required buffers because they're similar uses, similar intensities.
But is it something that the developer would have the option to do, or that we could encourage them to do?
Most definitely. So for instance, there's a good example with this neighborhood master plan that adjacent to the Newell Farm. We do have some residential product next to Newell Farm. We did ask them to create a buffer between the backside of those lots and the Newell Farm property line, and they obliged, and they provided a 15-foot buffer, and that is reflected on the neighborhood master plan. So yes, those are things that come about throughout the review process, the referral process, and then as things develop with Newell Farm or what have you. But yes, those things will be seen again as they come through their submittals for like preliminary plat and final plat.
But you said that the Newell Farm example, they implemented that at the neighborhood master plan stage.
Yes,
So
in our request.
We could make, if we decided to recommend to the town board that they approve this neighborhood master plan, we could make it a condition that the developer consider providing more information at the next stage about buffering.
Potentially, yes, you could certainly do that.
But I think, my ultimate concern here is that we're looking at an unfinished neighborhood master plan.
Right.
And so it's very difficult to make those kind of recommendations when we don't even know what is going to be on this part of the site. We can speculate that it's going to be single-family homes, but we don't know that. The plan doesn't reflect that. So I have trouble imagining how we would even frame that kind of recommendation when there's not currently anything there except a school.
So I can provide clarification on that. So the reason in the neighborhood master plan that you're seeing in the school site, you do see 2 notes. The reason it's labeled 5th filing is that if for whatever reason they come to a conclusion that the school site is not going to exist any longer moving forward, that then they would come back through, you would be essentially approving it either as the school site or Farmstead 5th filing.
And the reason it's fifth filing, because we already have a fourth filing in process, which is a commercial portion on the west side of County Road 1. So this would be fifth filing. They would have to come back through the process to plat that property. And if it's over 10 acres, they would have to do a neighborhood master plan, potentially, yes.
So we would see a third filing plat for kind of like everything excluding that area, and then a fifth filing plat
Correct.
for the school site.
Correct. Yes, yes. And it's likely, at preliminary plat, if it were to remain a school site, they would likely, through preliminary plat, create a tract. Tracts are not developable. Tracts are sellable, or you can convey tracts. So that would then leave it, they could convey it to the school district, and then the school district would come back potentially, they could potentially also do it as a one big lot, but depending on their preferences, they can do it either or, and then if it was a tract, the school district could come back and do further minor subdivision to make it a buildable lot. So lots are the only land that technically is developable through the plating action, so they can leave it as a tract, so it's just transferable.
And at the last public hearing, we did hear from some neighbors, and I see one person in particular in the audience that expressed concern, should that be developed, abutting unincorporated Weld County, and there's still some agricultural operations on the property. So as that fifth filing may come in and change from a potential school site to more dense development, it would be my hope that the applicant has heard the neighbors, and that when they come back in with that proposed development, that some kind of buffering and communication with the neighbors had occurred to mitigate the neighbors' concerns.
Or we could remind them.
Yes, definitely. You can remind them, yes.
All right, does that help with number 4? How are we feeling about that? What are we thinking? We think that,
Yeah, I think that it's encouraging that there are opportunities to recommend buffers, and that we would see a specific plat for that site.
for that side again,
change is
yeah.
made.
I feel better about, that makes me feel a bit more at ease about it as well. But in your comments that we want to make about number 4.
So does that need to be a condition? Does this need to be a condition on our,
We have the option to do that.
yeah,
We have the option to make it a condition saying if, depending on what happens with that
Right.
particular area, that we would recommend
right,
to the, when we make a recommendation to the town council, that we'd also recommend that the developer consider providing a buffering plan with the preliminary plat, which is the next phase.
Okay, I'm gonna make a note of that. And I think it also is sort of contingent on whether or not we're keeping the third condition, and we'll have a relationship to that.
Yeah,
So we should,
I agree.
let's revisit it, I think.
All right, so for right now, we're saying we think that they have met number 4. Okay.
Yeah.
For the purposes of moving along. All right, so let's look at number 5. There's a need or desirability within the community for the development, and the development will help achieve a balance of land use and/or housing types within Berthoud according to town goals. Or after the work session, what is that?
Yes.
Yeah,
well, I think it's, yeah.
yes.
And could I ask a question? I know on the issue we were really talking about is the agreement with the school district and their lack of from the last meeting. So when the staff has the recommendation that the applicant shall provide a letter from the school district confirming the school district no longer desires a future school site, or to find an alternative, what is the basis of the criteria for that condition number 3?
So the additional provisions within the code that require either cash in lieu of dedication or land dedication, or site dedication for school sites,
Yeah.
that is a requirement within the code for any land division process. And because it was reflected on the 2021 Neighborhood Master Plan as existing and agreed upon, there's a component of that because it was already approved as part of a neighborhood master plan, and this is in essence a amendment to a neighborhood master plan. Is following that and making sure and ensuring, as I had stated in my presentation, that it is our responsibility that if commitments are made on a previous approval, that they are reflected in a future submittals. But also the additional provisions within the code that are specific to, like I said, cash in lieu or land dedication, because as you know on the slides, for a neighborhood master plan, it states that the town development code states that the town shall use the following criteria in addition to other applicable provisions of the code. So those additional provisions would be the requirement for that land dedication. So that is the basis behind, and either way that you look at it, they will need to resolve this issue before preliminary plat in either instance, because plating actions are, like I said, what creates the legal lot. So they beneficially we would like to have this resolved by preliminary plat, so that when it goes out for referral review and all of that, we're getting feedback on whatever this may be or not be. So whether it's fifth filing or it's the school tract or lot, that we can start getting those review comments. So if there is a need or not, so be looking at buffers or what have you, we can start capturing that information right off the bat. Because what we don't want to see is that they resolve this by, say, our fourth submittal of preliminary plat, we're getting ready for hearing, and then all of a sudden something changes again, and we're back into the same boat. So, and at that stage, since we are going through hearing then to produce the actual lot, and yes, preliminary plat doesn't actually create the lot, it's final plat that does, but truly your preliminary plat per the regulations of the development code, when you go into final plat, there should be no substantial changes. Because if you do have substantial changes, that could potentially kick you back into preliminary plat. So there's thus the justification that why staff chose at preliminary plat submittal, but it's those additional provisions.
And in the code, it states that adequate facilities need to be incorporated into land development decisions, and providing adequate facilities for a school site can be done in a myriad different ways, including cash in lieu, dedication. There are lots of, those two just stick out right now to me. But providing for adequate facilities is part of how staff reviews a land use application. It can be water, it can be sewer, it can be roads and, power. But schools and, adequate ability for the fire protection district and other emergency responders to get to the site. Those are all of the things that we look at, and it is in the code that says adequate facilities must be provided.
So, in a sense, what you're saying is that's part of the consideration. Okay. So that's where that's brought in, I guess, Joe, and thank you, both of you, for that. All right, so let's go back to number 5 then, and then do we think that the applicant has, with this particular application, met number 5?
Yes, there's a variety of housing types that meet the needs of the town.
I agree, I think.
Yeah, I would say that from what we know today, yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it. From what we know right now, yes. Joe, some thoughts about that?
Yes, I believe that they've met criteria 5.
All right, so do we want to revisit number 4? Or do we want to talk about, do we believe that, well, there's two ways to think about this, because we just talked about the fact that some of this may end up having to get resolved at preliminary plat. Or not. And then things kind of stalled or stopped for a while. Do we want to then agree that the applicant has met all four of the criteria that we see here?
Yeah, the criteria are very specific, and so it doesn't leave us a lot of room for
Yes, unfortunately, yeah.
broader interpretation. And I think, yes, technically the neighborhood master plan that's been presented meets the criteria. I will maintain that this feels unfinished to me and not likely to become the final version of what we see. And so that's why I think the conditions will be very important.
Very important, yes, agreed. Everyone else feel similarly?
I mean, I agree that it's met these 5 criteria, but I don't agree that it has met the additional provisions that adequate facilities have been required.
Yeah.
I believe that Farmstead is, for a long time, has agreed to providing this property for the school, and that if there's a change in state law, that the developer should adjust accordingly. And I think it's I think fundamental to our development code that we provide adequate schools for the town. And as the town continues to grow and the thousands of houses and children that are going in with these kind of developments need a place to go to school. And based on the school district's letter, there's no property that's, close enough to town that would be available to do this. It's so late now that they wouldn't be able to buy something in Central Bertha to provide a school property. And I guess I'm reading these correspondence with the developer refusing to work with the school. I'm not thinking that this is the kind of development that we would approve. And I guess I would be motion for denial on this development.
Are you making a motion now, or?
No, I would like to hear what the rest of the commissioners think, but that's my reaction to the additional information we've received through these correspondences since the hearing in August.
So consider that if we, to deny that, we're basically saying that we don't agree with number 4 and that provision that would be that Anne discussed, where she said, where does it say here? It says, in addition to other applicable provisions of the code, so you'd be using that language to dovetail with that provision of the code that Anne, that you read.
You quoted a specific part. Could we hear that again?
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
have it?
It would be adequate facilities, providing adequate facilities.
It's actually suitable,
It's okay.
site suitable for school purposes, I think is the language when that Ann and Todd, because we're looking at 30-2-110. Applicant shall dedicate land areas suitable for school purposes.
All right, so what you'd be, all right, I'm just trying to think through this. What we'd be doing then, Aaron, is saying that we think that if we were to deny, we would have to then, considering what Joe just said, say that we would deny based on the criteria in addition to other applicable provisions of the code, using that language and then bringing that piece of the code as that other applicable provision of the code.
I think so. I think also, a neighborhood master plan, in your criteria number 2, the neighborhood master plan represents functional system of land use, I think that it dovetails, I think you can put that concern about a suitable school, under there as well. I would just suggest or offer that for your consideration.
Yeah, functional system of land use, it's so broad, it's
Yeah,
almost
it's so- yes.
impossible to
Yeah.
interpret what that,
Yeah, that one's a tough one.
it could mean anything we, we
Yeah.
need it to mean.
But principally, it would mean that the roads, the sewer, the school, everything is functional.
And if you'd like me to, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission, I can read that particular section out loud, and Ton also does have it on a slide if we need it.
If you wouldn't mind, I think that would be helpful for us.
Yeah.
So section 30-2-110 of the current land use code is titled Contribution for Public School Sites. And to meet the increased need for schools as a result of increased housing, the applicant shall dedicate land areas or sites suitable for school purposes or provide cash in lieu of land in the amount specified for every dwelling unit which may be constructed within the subdivision to serve the elementary, middle, and high school public school needs of the residents of such dwelling units. The town may elect that public school sites may be transferred and conveyed to the town or school district pursuant to stipulations in intergovernmental agreements between the town and the respective school district. So what that particular portion of the land use code says is that development shall pay its way to contribute for school sightings, and that can happen in one of two specific ways. One, the cash in lieu of land dedication, or land dedication itself. So there are options that the developer has to work with the school district on coming up with a solution to this issue. And I think that we have to allow that to occur.
Yeah, there are two things that stuck out to me about that. The first being the word suitable, which clearly the developer and Thompson School District have different interpretations of
suitable.
the word suitable. And then, I mean, we picked out the part of shall dedicate land areas suitable for school purposes, but the rest of the sentence there is that they do have this other option, which the applicant has expressed that they would pursue if that was.
Basically, you can do A or B.
Yeah.
Right.
And this, yeah.
So.
So I'm not sure we have
so-
basis to recommend denial on
Based
those
just on that,
grounds.
yeah.
Because
Now that I
they
hear the
still-
whole thing in context.
They still have an opportunity to work with the school district.
Yeah.
To
Which
lay out money.
I think,
that would,
yeah, and so
Yes.
this is where I think, okay, so I'm gonna kind of move on to a different option, which would be
Yes.
approval with,
Before you do that.
yeah,
Joe,
conditions.
what
So
do
let's
you-
stop.
Go ahead.
I want to hear what Joe
Yeah.
Yeah.
thinks about what we just heard. I mean, how do you feel about it?
I mean, I know that they have an option, but I mean, it's clear that they're in a disagreement based on these correspondences. And so to me, that disagreement is the basis for approval. Like they have not come to agreement. I also think it's just the timing of all of this. I mean, if they would have agreed to pay cash in lieu at the beginning of the farmstead development, there would have been a greater opportunity for the town the school district to purchase property. And so I mean, the code is written to be very fair and give everybody a chance to do the right thing. I think that it's a very small change to move this school property to meet the requirements, and the developer is refusing to do that. And to me, that's a sign that this is not the kind of development that is going to be functional or desirable for our community. I mean, we don't need this subdivision if they're not going to support the school district. I mean, that's not gonna work with the school district, along with every other special district in our community. And so I would want to see a community-minded development as basis for approval. And it's
Well, and I think to a certain extent, and I understand that sentiment, you know, because I think none of us wants to deny our community a school, particularly in this eastern portion of our community, which really doesn't have that, you know, this type of educational facility. But I'm also concerned about making sure that we are looking at this from the perspective of what can happen next. I mean, I don't think that's closed, that door's closed yet. And the other thing that I will be honest, I am very disappointed in both the school district and the applicant that they didn't even have meeting one face-to-face about this when we asked them specifically to do that. So that, while that's an irritation, I think we have to be objective about what is going to
we
happen
do
next.
have 2 emails from the school district requesting, you know,
The meeting,
a
yeah.
meeting, and that was
But
doesn't seem like that was happened. I mean, also, I mean, right now in Berthoud, our schools are overcrowded. We're busing children to Loveland. That's not a functional system in my mind. And we're
Well-
just making it worse with this,
But I do
approving
think
this
they need
kind
to
of
work
thing.
together.
Yes, I do too, and I
Right.
think, I
And I
don't
don't
think that
see
issue is really that closed yet. I mean, what other alternatives did they talk about? Well, they didn't talk, so they just both took a position and said, and here's our legal position, and here's this and that,
Right.
without any discussion. And
Yeah.
being someone who has a legal background, I look at that and say, well, yeah, you can always go to that. You can always go to that as part of your position. But if we're in a community that's growing, and if we don't, when we start hitting these kinds of bumps in the road, if we don't try to at least look at different solutions for the problem.
I mean, I think a solution would be all of the children in Farmstead Third, all the Farmstead filings are bused out of to Loveland. I mean, I don't want my children bused to Loveland because they're making room for these children. I mean, development needs to pay its way, and development, that's the basis of our development code. And I just feel like this doesn't smell right to me. It doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah, but I do think it's a two-way street.
Yeah, agreed.
I do think, and that's why I asked. The school district also had opportunities to talk about this early on in the process, and they didn't. And I believe that everyone deserves a fair shake. If we want people to come into our community and develop it, then we have to be fair, and everybody has to be fair, all the reviewing agencies. And I understand that the developer's taken a hard line, that we'll just pay you in lieu and it's your problem. But I do think that there should be a discussion, an arbitration, whatever, because there is a solution. It's just people are being stubborn on both ends, I believe.
And I tend to feel the same way you do, Nick, and if there's a way that we can at least have those conversations happen and at least meet out what some of the alternatives are as opposed to either or.
And maybe what we do, Joe, I mean, if this sounds good, you know, we put a stipulation in there, requirement, that they have a meeting and they come back with alternatives. Otherwise, if we can't come back with alternatives, everyone loses, and I do think everyone loses, including the school district.
But you're saying approve it with a stipulation if they come back?
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to push back on that a little bit, I mean, that's kind of what we did in August.
Oh, okay.
I mean.
And we didn't, okay,
And
well,
that's why we did
so-
the continuance.
I wasn't here for that meeting.
Oh, okay,
so
yeah, sorry, and so that's why we did the continuance,
Yeah.
is to give them an opportunity to come back with options and come back with a solution. And Joe, I definitely hear what you're saying and
Very good
agree
point.
with a lot of the points you've made. So I just, if I could ask you to like phrase what part of the code or development plan we would specifically recognize in a denial. Because I think that that's the hang up for me, is that
Right.
I want to make sure that we have this like grounded in something that is
Yeah.
defensible.
I think, I agree with that. If we are going to deny, we have to have
Yeah,
something that's
we have to
defensible.
have
But
grounds on it.
the other option we have, and I wrote down several options, here a minute ago, I was writing down, we have the option to continue it again. It is also an option. We can say that we can agree, and I think we're still wishy-washy a little bit about this, but we could agree, that it meets the criteria, but we could add another condition that they have to have a meeting before this goes to the trustees. Now, whether that's gonna fly, that's another question.
So,
but-
right, well, and I guess, like I said, I wasn't here for that last meeting, and if that's what they were supposed to do and it didn't happen, how many times do we go down this road?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
I guess the difference would be
Yeah.
that they had this
I
kind
mean-
of like hard
Right.
deadline with having a September
Right.
12th meeting, whereas this would just have to happen before they submit preliminary plat for condition 3. Is that, yeah, so that would kind of be up to the applicant then to
Right.
determine how long they have to figure that out.
right, because I mean, I think to sit here and rehash it over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
With-
not.
As much as I would love to see the development move forward, I don't know how you get both parties to the table and come up with a resolution. I think the developer has to go to the school district and sit down with them and come up with a compromise
And I'm not, and
that's
I'm,
suitable for everybody.
I agree, and I'm not insensitive to the fact that there were these opportunities for the school district to request some changes. And I'm not insensitive to the fact that making changes now would
Yes,
increase costs.
Yep.
I get that. But there's got to be some solution in the middle there where someone does cost sharing, or there's gotta be something
right.
there.
But
And-
we're talking about increased costs for the development. It's engineering costs. To me, it's not a big ask. This is not a big ask to relocate that property
Yeah.
a street over or 2 streets over, as we talked about last time. That's, that,
But it does get passed on to the residents.
Yeah.
it
Which-
does get passed on to the developer and the ultimately probably the lots and the people there, but that's, I mean, you want it to be designed correctly and you want it to have adequate schools. I mean, isn't that why we have this process, to make sure that
Right.
we're ensuring like that we're gonna have a strong community and I mean,
Mhm.
Yeah, to answer
Yeah.
your question,
Yeah,
yes,
I
it
agree.
is why we
Yeah.
have the process, but I also think that the applicant and the school district have put the planning commission in
In a
a
tough
very
spot.
In a really
difficult
tough spot.
position.
Yeah.
So Madam Chair, if I may, make a comment.
Sure.
So when you're deliberating and if you should choose to recommend denial, the conditions of approval, which would have a stipulation that they work something out with the school district or any other conditions that you may want to apply, would not be forwarded on to the town board of trustees. It would just be a vote for denial.
Yeah.
So if you make a motion for approval, it would include those conditions. If you so choose to keep them, revise them, edit them, add new ones. And the conditions of approval are, again, methods in order to meet the criteria for approval that's outlined in our land use code. So a condition of approval is a tool to say, we believe that these have been met with the caveat that these conditions of approval remain in place. So I just wanted to make that just point of order clarification on when you do deliberate and decide to make your motion, what the consequence is of your decision.
So, in other words, if we look at the wording of of the condition 3 that was recommended. And can we read that, just so we are all clear on what that
I can,
means?
yeah, I can read it out loud. The applicant shall provide a letter from the Thompson School District confirming either the school district no longer desires a future school site in the Farmstead 3 filing, or the school district has agreed to an alternative school site within the Farmstead 3rd filing. If an alternative school site is selected, the site shall be provided at the preliminary plat submittal. Depending on the relocation, a revised neighborhood master plan may be warranted. So that's actually, that's a relatively stringent condition.
It is.
Right.
In the sense that the school district sort of has,
It's kind of in their,
yeah,
it's in their, you know,
yeah.
it's
I mean,
in
if
their decision rights
And
at
we
this
could
point.
reword it even to say that
Yeah.
we anticipate some type of discussion among the two of them. Yeah, but that's pretty stringent because it would require them to get a letter.
Okay, so the point is, if we were to move forward, even approving with this condition, let's just say this condition, we're not putting a time deadline on it, correct? We don't have to put a time deadline on it? So this thing could sit out there forever until the developer and the school district decide they're gonna get together and actually negotiate,
Yes.
Yeah.
right?
At least make some effort. That was
Right, and so, you know, maybe that's the motion. I mean, they have to mitigate their differences and try to figure out what they want to do, and, you know, if this thing takes, as much as I'd like to see this thing move forward, I'm not seeing movement on either side. I mean, both sides are standing on their side of the bridge saying, we're not gonna build it. And it's pretty disappointing.
Agreed. All right, so that leaves, we've talked about basically
It's
two
almost a
alternatives
waste of
right now.
time.
We've pretty much said we don't want to see this continued again, right? Am I right
Yep.
about that?
No.
So that leaves us the alternative to approve as we believe it has met, or approve the neighborhood master plan because we believe it has met the criteria. We can approve, or we can approve with conditions, and we can use the conditions 1, 2, and 3 that we've talked about. Or we can add another condition. I think
Yes.
we were gonna add, we may add a condition about providing some type of buffering plan, you know. So I'm sorry.
Oh, you had the buffering plan.
Do you have another condition?
Well,
think
you
we
know,
have-
Ann kind of helped us out here.
Okay,
And one of the conditions is if the future school site is developed for residential uses, the applicant shall mitigate compatibility concerns between adjacent properties and the proposed development.
so that would be like a condition 5.
That's condition 5, yeah.
What was, sorry, what was 4?
We were talking about
The
encouraging
buffer.
the developer to provide a buffering plan with the kind of preliminary plat.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those shouldn't be together, that would be
No,
separate.
that would be a
Okay.
separate one, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that's our other alternative. Or we, like I said, we can deny, and, because we believe it doesn't meet, well, we have several things that we could say about denying it, if it's meet number 4, or we say that it doesn't meet number 2. I mean, so that's kind of where our decision lies right now, summing that up.
So if we deny, everything goes back to ground zero, Joe.
Yeah, and then,
If we deny, it goes to the town board
Goes
with
to the
our
town board.
recommendation to deny.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
well,
That's right,
yeah.
so, I mean, if we stay, it goes back to ground zero.
Right.
If we deny it, I think that sends probably a stronger message to the town board that we don't believe it meets the criteria. We can recommend these conditions for the town board to adopt. And it is stringent, it
Right.
probably does address my concern, item 3.
Is there a way we could make it stronger?
I just, I feel like, my biggest issue here is we gave them an opportunity to address this and fix this and nothing happened. So in my mind, instead of working together, having a meeting, they decided to have their lawyer write us a letter that said, and it's just, I just don't think that's right for Berthoud. And I still would, I don't know how to write the motion for denial. I'm not good at that kind of thing. I would need some help. But I mean, to me, that would be my preferred approach.
But if the,
But we don't have to be in consensus either. I mean, if you three are
It's honestly,
pro.
I agree with you. I agree
Yeah.
with you. And I think that we would just have trouble
substantiating it, yeah.
defending it on the grounds that we are disappointed in the developer, you know?
Well, and
Oh,
the
it's-
other thing that bothers
It
me
is
there,
grounded, yeah.
if we're worried about schools, if, you know, things are continue to develop out east, and if we are worried about school, denying this right now isn't going to necessarily make that happen any faster.
Right.
So that's the other thing that keeps going through my head.
Right.
Yeah.
Just a difficult
Mhm.
decision at this point. All right. I think we've probably talked this out until we're all a little
Yeah.
exasperated. We know we have kind of two options here. I'm going to entertain a motion. So if someone wants to make a motion, I'm going to see you do that at this point.
Again, I would like to see this move forward the appropriate way. I think if we deny and the town board denies, basically that's what I'm assuming. If we deny it, the town board will probably deny it and set it all back to ground zero. Do we want to do that? Is that what we want to do?
And you've
Or
already
do we
got
want
Farmstead
people to-
2.
Right.
You're going to start building on, I'm guessing next year, because from what I see when I take long walks in the morning, what I see, it's really progressing.
Right.
So, again, what keeps going back in my head is that going to make us get a school in that area any faster?
Right.
So I was asking a serious question earlier. Is there any way that we can make the statement and condition 3 any stronger than it is right now in pushing this process forward so that we do end up with a development that has a variety of housing types and also supports a school site? Is there anything that we can edit in what is written here that?
I don't know that, I don't think we can force the school district and the developer to get together. I don't think, to kind of, and I see Joe's point. I mean, just deny it and, enough's enough. No one wants to work with each other, deny it. I hate to do that. I'm more of like to get a deal done and get it done the right way. But if you're not gonna get people to sit down at the table, you're wasting everybody's time, including the public's time. I mean, you can take a hard stance, throw a roadblock up because you have a legal maybe right or you think you do, but at the end of the day, we can't force the school district to accept the lot, the property, or cash in lieu. I mean,
The question, again, that comes back, keeps going on in my head is, if somehow cash in lieu was the ultimate resolution, at least there's money for the
Right.
schools to be, I'm not sure how they would be able to find the land over on the east side, but
Right.
I don't know about that.
Well, and the cash in lieu isn't mentioned in this condition.
And
It
maybe
says that the options that are given here are that the school district no longer desires a future school site or has agreed to an alternative school site.
right,
Or has agreed to cash in lieu, maybe it needs to
Or-
say that.
or agree to cash in lieu, yeah. Because again, the cash in lieu is gonna be a negotiation. What is that value? So either way, you gotta work with the school district.
and again, my vision of our community is when we know that when we're growing, we are gonna hit these bumps in the road.
Yep.
And we are starting to see where we're gonna come up on a few of them. And if we just go the legal route every time, if people are allowed to do that and if we don't encourage them to try to find common ground somewhere, so to speak, I know that's not a good way to put it, but
Right.
if we don't encourage that, where are we gonna be 10 years from now?
Absolutely.
You know,
Does the comp plan show the school in that property?
I don't think so.
Does not.
Nope, school site selection is between the district and the developers, and they have their own criteria.
And you can't force the school districts to accept anything.
Correct.
It's a shame.
It's 5.
all right, so no one wants to make a motion, I'm getting that feeling.
Well,
All right, let me ask them this question. Joe, if we were to make a motion to approve with the 5 conditions we talked about, would that be something that you would be amenable to at this point? Or do you still feel like it needs to send a stronger message?
You're talking, you say 5 conditions, you mean these 3 conditions? Is that
The
what you
3
mean?
plus, we have one about requesting and encouraging the developer to provide at preliminary plat stage a plan for buffering.
Yeah.
And then the one that you read earlier, recommending the developer include, what was it? I'm trying to remember. You had it. You had
oh,
written
me,
it
I'm
earlier.
sorry. If the future school site is developed for residential uses, the applicant shall mitigate compatibility concerns between adjacent properties and the proposed development.
Okay.
Therefore, yeah,
So that would be the 5 conditions.
right,
I think number 3 is pretty strong.
yeah.
You know, and there's a possibility that the town board will look at it and say, oh, we didn't want to, we're just going to say it doesn't meet
Yeah.
criteria and we're going to deny it.
Which has happened.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
They're a little harder than we are.
And they have
Well,
different
yeah.
constraints on
Yes,
Right.
and we do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, yeah, I think that while we have our significant frustrations with how this has been presented to us, I think that a recommendation for approval with the 5 conditions is the planning commission's best effort to move this along in a way that, we don't end up in a situation where everyone loses out.
Yeah, and I think that's my biggest concern, that, and I think we lose out on any possibility of that school. That makes me very
Mhm.
trepidatious.
Right.
Word for it.
I can get behind that as a motion.
Okay, does someone want to make that motion? And let's preface it that you saw how long it took us to talk about this.
Right.
That none of us is happy with how this is.
Right.
You know, being, as citizens of Berthoud, we would much rather have had this worked out. We all believe that there should be buffering, there should be, and that it's preferable to have a school here. And I'm not speaking for you, tell me, Karen, no, that's not how I think, but I got that idea from everything we've talked about tonight. So I hope that our audience understands too, this is not a decision that we make lightly at all.
Mhm.
All right,
And,
so
yeah,
we're gonna make a motion, I would entertain one.
Okay, were we gonna put a buffering motion in, or buffering,
Condition?
yeah,
condition?
I think so.
Okay, what is that? Do we know what that is?
I mean,
That they provide, that we encourage the developer to provide a plan of buffering
at the preliminary
at the
plat
preliminary
stage.
plat stage.
And I don't think that's dependent on anything. I think we can just
And is that, but can you provide a little bit more direction on buffering what from what?
Well, I think, and particularly from the testimony we heard on August 8th, I think there was some concern about being able to buffer the east side and then from the adjacent landowners. So
Would that be covered in the, what Nick or Commissioner Semidalis read?
That was my initial question.
Yeah,
is
if we
it
can
though?
just,
Can you read that again?
so if the future school site is developed for residential uses, the applicant shall mitigate compatibility concerns between adjacent properties and the proposed development.
But what if it isn't? In other words, I guess we have another bite at the apple if it's a fifth plat, if it isn't developed as a school. So we could make that
Well,
concern.
no,
then.
that's what it says, is if it's not developed.
If it's
as a
not
school.
developed
okay.
as a school.
Yeah,
right?
Okay.
yeah.
But if it is developed as a school, I think from what I heard, they also wanted some buffering. So am I wrong about that? Did I miss that in my notes?
That I don't remember.
I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah.
Which I did bring with me. Because I just don't remember.
I believe the property owner that expressed concern was more concerned if it was not developed as a school site, because there would be more homes tighter to their agricultural use and their agricultural property. And that was the concern that was expressed, because at least with the school site, you don't have development right up next
You
to
have
their
playgrounds
property.
and all sorts of stuff, yeah.
And there's like, dogs and stuff with houses.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I think you're right. I just didn't remember. All right, so then we would probably be okay with just 4.
Okay. All right. You want me to read?
Are you gonna make that motion?
I can make that motion.
Can I just,
Yeah.
before we go down just one box to check, is there anything in here that, the school district implied that approving this, actually, they didn't imply, they directly said it in one of these letters, that approving this would force them to put a school in this 2,000-foot buffer zone of a well. Is there any, like,
I don't think that number 3, it forces them to do anything.
Yeah. So I
Right,
just want to make
basi-
sure that
yeah.
we're not doing
The
that.
developer still has the opportunity to negotiate.
Yeah, we're really,
Basically is what
and I think.
We're
the-
encouraging
and I
them
wish
to do
the
that.
School district
Yeah.
people were here so we could tell them this, and I'm sure
Right.
staff will tell them what our sentiment was, but
Right.
that we're not forcing them to build a school where they might believe it's inappropriate. We're saying, try to work this out, in a way that is palatable to both parties. At least come up with some alternatives, and if that doesn't work, that doesn't work, but that's
Right.
what we're asking.
And do you think that's clear enough in the condition that's been laid out here?
I think so. And
I just wanted to
would
like
add-
bring it up for conversation,
would
so
add
that the
that-
school district doesn't get the impression that this is what we want, is the school in exactly where it's proposed,
I think you could use, I think that language you talked about, adding or cash in lieu in that one sentence would make that clearer.
I really don't want to add our cash in lieu. I mean, that's what.
I
the-
sort of agree with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the school district's exactly denying that. And
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the school district's plans, they have that school and they're trying to build schools in South Loveland for our kids.
Yeah.
And it's not a good plan. And so
No.
I don't want to encourage that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Madam Chair, may I make a clarification on that
Please.
condition?
Yeah.
So the intent of staff writing that condition was not to exclude cash in lieu. The assumption is, and maybe that's where, that assumption shouldn't have been made, is that if they decide, if the school district or whatever the conclusion is made between the two of them, if the school site is moved out of Farmstead third filing, then the assumption would be, as per code, since they're no longer dedicating, they would be required to do cash in lieu. So it was not the intent of that
Mhm.
statement, that condition,
Mhm.
that it's all or nothing.
To
Right.
include
It's-
that.
Yeah.
Yes, so, yes, absolutely, if they do not dedicate the site, the site, and if that does not come to fruition, they definitely will be required to pay cash in lieu. This does not exclude them from that.
Okay.
Yes.
So are you still don't want to add that professionally?
Well,
No?
it sounds like it was staff's impression that that was assumed and built into
Okay.
what was said, so.
Maybe some of that is how that's communicated to both parties.
But certainly, if you want to clarify that, by all means. I just wanted to make it clear that that was not the intent, for sure. Thank you.
Okay. I'll ask again, I would entertain a motion at this point.
Just got all the fancy notes.
Okay, okay. All right, so, and we would do all four conditions at this point, right? So I move to recommend approval of the Farmstead Third Filing Neighborhood Master Plan to the Town Board of Trustees with the following conditions. The applicant shall confirm and show the upsized sanitary line as referenced in baseline engineering referral. Comments dated July 24th, 2024 with the Farmstead Third Filing Preliminary Plat Application Submittal. Number 2, the applicant shall include sufficient right-of-way width for the north half of Weld County, page 3, Road 42.5, extending from Weld County Road 1 east approximately 1,160 feet. This must be included with the Farmstead Third Filing Preliminary Plat Application Submittal to ensure completion of the required local streets section frontage improvements along the southern property boundary. Number 3, the applicant shall provide a letter from the Thompson School District confirming either the school district no longer desires a future school site in the
Madam
Farmstead.
Chair, I apologize for interrupting. We would like to withdraw the application.
Staff, what's the protocol here?
That if they wish to withdraw the application, then if they would want to resubmit an application, that they would have to start all over at the beginning. And so if they want to withdraw their application, that ends the meeting and it does not move forward to the Town Board of Trustees. It would just be withdraw.
And is that your final decision about this?
It is.
Okay. Then, at that point, then this land use issue is no longer available for us to take a position or vote. So, all right, thank you for that information. All right, so let's, at this point in our meeting, we would entertain staff reports, if there are any.
Yes, so at the work session earlier, you heard that there are some housing study opportunities coming up. There are interviews with different groups of our population. Meeting on the 19th, there will be 3 interview blocks with Ayers and Associates. Staff will not be present to encourage, open dialogue with Ayers. Then on the 21st, the Ayers will be at the rec center talking with families, talking with individuals that will come and speak with them. At the rec center, it will be pretty much all day until mid-afternoon. And then there will be Oktoberfest. They will have a booth and staff will be there as well.
And just, is Oktoberfest going to be at Town Park? Is that a grand opening of Town Park too?
Grand opening of Town Park is this Saturday.
Ah, all right. Okay, cool.
Yay.
And will staff be there?
Staff will be there. I
All
believe
right.
it's at 9 o'clock and it's a big celebration.
Cool.
We'll
Yep.
be there.
So be there. And then on October 10th, Habitat, we've asked Habitat for Humanity and Loveland Housing Authority if they will come and present findings, their perspective on housing in their area as well as in Berthoud, and the types of clients they're working with and what some of their needs are. And so we'd like to hear from them, their philosophy. I know that Executive Director Brody is very excited about potentially expanding their influence in the town and what can be done there. And then on the 24th of October, there will be a land use hearing that's scheduled that evening. And we might do it similar to this where we have a work session first, because it might be unveiling of some of the findings that heirs have collected, and then have a land use hearing after that. So from a staffing perspective, we have a building permit technician that is going through a significant health challenge and has been since February. That individual has resigned as of this week. And so we have 1.5 building permit technicians right now. And we've realized that we really need to have another full-time. So we will have 2.5 building permit technicians starting the week of the 23rd. So that's exciting. And if you know of any civil engineers, we are looking to start building a column, I call it a column, a division to do development review, construction inspection, to really start building a robust team for the town. We have absolutely loved Baseline Engineering. We've relied on Baseline to do our work, but as Berthoud grows, it's no longer sustainable from a financial perspective to have that third-party engineering team. Now, there are lots of things we are going to need Baseline for over the next several years. However, we need to start growing that function internally. So if you do know a good civil engineer that would want to be an engineering supervisor, somebody to build that development review team for the town of Berthoud, please have them check our website. We really want to get somebody in as soon as possible and start building that. I think other than that, Ton, Terry?
Is it possible for you to just email us with the dates?
Yes.
So that we can put those in our
Yeah.
calendars?
You bet.
Yeah.
I guess the only one update I can provide you all is short-term rental regulations
yes.
do go into effect midnight, September 23rd.
Oh, wow.
We have a short-term rental, a new wonderful, lovely tab that Terry created on our website that contains all helpful information. All our application materials are squared away and ready to go. So hopefully, we know we have at least a handful who are currently working to get their applications together. So we're hopeful that all the guidance we've provided, we have a webinar we did, so that's out on our website, the recording and the actual PowerPoint presentation. So we're hopeful that we'll see some pretty solid submittals and we'll get this rolling. So good job, Tom. Coming.
Yeah.
Tom,
Good job, yeah.
Tom and Terry have worked really hard. They had webinars, they have application materials all prepared. This was a labor of love. Tom really carried the burden and the brunt of nearly a year of phone calls. There have been times where Ton in particular, it didn't need to be personal attacks, but there have been a lot of people that have been incredibly negative. And so, Ton, you weathered all of that like a champ and developed some really nice regulations. And Terry, thank you so much for all of your help supporting Ton. And really the package that's been developed is top notch. They've done an amazing job.
Great job,
You would
guys.
expect no less from
Thank
too,
you,
so,
yeah.
you guys can now get up and do your little Snoopy dance.
It's weird. It's a weird concept, but here we are. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for all you do for the citizens, the residents of Berthoud.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you.
absolutely.
Anything else?
Is it possible to get a copy of Walt's presentation? I actually found that
I
very
would love to
interesting.
get a copy
Yeah.
of this presentation.
I found it very interesting.
Yep. And Madam Chair, I have one more thing. So the last, oh my goodness gracious. So the last code amendment that we are going to propose in 2024 was passed on Tuesday. It's that nice, great, big land use table, so it's all
Oh,
together.
gosh, yeah.
Now, I will also tell you, do not look online on Muni Code for our land use code because it is not as the ordinances dictate it should be. So continue reflecting back to Terry's red line version
Okay.
of our land use code. That is the correct audited version. So even after 3 audits of the Muni Code version, what's been published is incorrect.
Thank you for that.
Yes, so refer back to Terry, and Terry, would you mind resending that version out to the Planning Commission? Thank you. So yes, we will get Walt's, and I bet Terry, you've got Walt's PowerPoint, you can send that out
I'll send that too.
And while we were in here, AIRS sent a memo with the table and the grid on household size and
Oh, good,
that.
yes.
So that will be sent out as
Good.
well to you all.
Interesting. I've got to remember to say the right name of the group. I know it's a steering committee. They're a housing study steering committee. I have to say it right. I'll get the hang of it.
Yep.
I work with so many task forces. I'm on what, 4 national task forces right now, and you think I would be able to say all the names, and I still can't even say all those.
And did any other planning commissioners have anything that they would like to say?
Anybody else? Anything?
I guess I wanted to announce I'm going to resign from the planning commission. This will be my last meeting.
I'll miss you, Joe.
Thank you. And I just really want to compliment all the work that staff does, and I have a great appreciation for everything that goes into planning and development and growing the town of Berthoud. And I would like to continue to do this. I have my plate's too full right now, and my son plays soccer at Berthoud High School, and their games are every Thursday night. So like tonight I missed the game, and I'm gonna miss a couple more games, and I just have to prioritize that.
Family first.
It's
Well, so I was
just
gonna
not
say,
the right
It's been a pleasure
time
having you
in my
on
life
board.
probably for this to happen.
so I was gonna say, is that what happens when you're the president of the soccer league?
I'm also president of the soccer club, so that
There you
also
go.
takes up too much time. So, yeah.
Oh, well, you will be missed for sure.
Thank you.
Well, so I would have brought cake if I'd known.
Yeah,
this
yeah,
was-
well. I should have leaked it.
There you go. Well,
Leaked my
you would
resignation.
definitely be missed. Stay in touch, please.
Thank you.
Because your voice was, I think, a really good voice.
I actually saw him in
You
church.
balanced us, and I think that's really good. But, all right, well, we'll miss you. Anything else, folks? So then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn.
Second.
So Commissioner Simodalis moves to adjourn, and Commissioner Smith seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstentions. Yay, we're done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.